Welcome back, and well, Michael Saylor is again saying we are not going to have a bear market, even though the market and the data show us something different. But we are now hearing that the bill has been passed for clarity, the Genius Act. This has to do with stable coins, crypto clarity when it comes to which agencies oversee what and who can do what. This is huge for crypto. This is really, really big for crypto. It actually may be a little bit bigger for crypto outside of Bitcoin than it is for Bitcoin because we've had regulatory clarity on Bitcoin for quite a while now that Bitcoin was not a security. It was treated as a commodity and was pretty much regulatorily approved everywhere, at least, in kind of the US kind of jurisdictions. But now we're starting to see the shift. The shift is going into other cryptos, into other infrastructure plays. And what we're going to be talking about in today's video is really the macro environment of where we are, what is going on in this cycle, and what are the plays, what are the moves? Because I keep getting asked, well, Cryptoviser, Michael Saylor saying we're never going to have a bear market again. Does that mean we just buy into Bitcoin, or do we get into these altcoins? We're going to be discussing all of that in today's video. We're going to be talking about Cathie Wood, MicroStrategy, the government, the Bitcoin ETFs, the new kind of coin market cap, which they call fair market cap, where they take out the memes, the stable coins, and centralized exchange tokens to rank the top cryptos. But again, we're also hearing from a lot of industry participants that really Wall Street isn't even looking at market caps anymore because market caps don't necessarily determine the functionality or capabilities of these blockchains, as we've been discussing pretty extensively on this channel. So make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. That way you never miss a new video. We got a lot to discuss in today's video. We're going to be starting with what happened with these bills and really the fact that Tom Emmer says the president of the United States promised to make America the crypto capital of the world, and they delivered. Give this video a free thumbs up. Let's get right into today's video, and check out my other videos. If you're new to this channel, we upload every single day completely for free. All I ask for are free thumbs up. Let's get right into today's video. Now, again, wherever you are on the political spectrum, it doesn't really matter when we're talking about finance and crypto, because when we're looking at and analyzing the market, we have to do it from a very neutral standpoint. So it doesn't matter what the politics of the situation are, who is involved, whether we agree with them or don't agree with them. We're really looking at, are they moving forward with giving crypto clarity? Are they moving forward with passing these pro-crypto bills to keep the United States at the forefront of innovation and technology? And the answer at the end of the day is the majority said yes. And now we have more promises delivered, right? Again, even if you don't like the president of the United States, right? If you're investing in crypto or want the best for the future of the country, this is one of the things that is going to put the U.S. at the forefront and keep the U.S. at the forefront, especially when we're talking about the dollar. Because by tokenizing the dollar, you're going to open up a vast array of new opportunities for companies in the United States, for the dollar to remain dominant and the world reserve currency. Because if we don't have the dollar, life will change as we know it. Moving right along, Caitlin Long, who's been trying to open up her own crypto bank for years, is now telling CNBC that this big, beautiful bill will balloon U.S. spending and drive demand for Bitcoin. And so, obviously she's a Bitcoin maximalist, it seems, very similar to Michael Saylor, which we're going to be listening to in just a few minutes. But the play may not actually be Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the indicator. Bitcoin is the indicator for the rest of the market because Bitcoin can only do a certain number of things. It's not even really used for payments anymore. Ever, really. But if they are able to get the tax situation around Bitcoin figured out for like smaller transactions, then Bitcoin may be used for payments. But right now, it is just a store of value. And cryptos outside of Bitcoin can do much more from a technological standpoint, from a bandwidth standpoint, from a building on top of the base chain standpoint. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out because Wall Street is still so focused on Bitcoin, but they're starting to kind of open up outside of Bitcoin. But let's listen to what Caitlin Long says here about how this is going to impact, the demand for Bitcoin and really impact the banks. Not just the banks, credit card companies too. We'll get to that in just a minute as well. Let's listen in.
But your question about Bitcoin is really interesting because I've always thought stable coins are an on-ramp to Bitcoin. And as people get used to the notion of digital money and wallets as opposed to accounts, like we have at a bank account at a bank or a securities firm, we're going to have a wallet with digital money. And as long as you can go back and forth relatively easily, which is what we're working on with Vantage, then all of a sudden that's going to make Bitcoin and other digitally native monies more intuitive for folks to use. The user experience is going to get better and better, feel more and more like online banking.
But the thing is, why would I ever want to use my Bitcoin if it's going to appreciate in value, right?
That's Gresham's law right there. The good money doesn't get spent, it gets saved, and the bad money is what gets spent like a hot potato. You just illustrated it right there. This is one of the big drivers, of course. When I saw the big, beautiful bill pass and allegedly Doge was going to cut $2 trillion of spending, and then it got cut back to $1, and then it was $500 billion, and now they're fighting over $9 billion in the Senate last night. We're just not going to cut back spending, and all of that is really positive for hard money assets like Bitcoin and gold and real estate and some of the other plays that are defenses against long-term inflation.
And it's really, really important to remember that, they're trying to say, well, people are just going to hold their Bitcoin. Well, what do people do with their real estate? They just hold it, and it increases in value over time. But because of, I guess just evolution, right? The real estate industry is so saturated, and there is this misbelief that you can really make a lot of money in real estate. Now, historically, you have been able to. We're kind of in a period where it's harder. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way. But in the period that we're in, it is cheaper and more efficient to put your savings into Bitcoin than put it in a home, because homes are overpriced. The fees for property taxes and utilities and maintenance are extremely high, and there's a lot of risk there. And so this idea that, again, we're going through a shift in financial understanding, in financial markets, in the financial landscape of the world, and specifically talking about the United States. This is a major mindset shift for a lot of people. A lot of people still, they look at crypto and they're like, no, this is not a better investment than real estate. And personally, I do believe that it is. It doesn't even matter where we are in the cycle. Because as you guys know, I believe that we're at towards the end of the bull market. And we could have higher to go, but generally speaking, we're pretty much done with the bull market for Bitcoin, this cycle at least. And so it doesn't matter where we are in the cycle. When you think about owning real estate at elevated prices, right? These landlords are not lowering prices. I've seen homes on the market for over 1 year, and they'll lower it by $5,000. And I know that a lot of this also has to do with real estate agents telling their clients, oh, don't worry, rates are coming down. We've been getting told that since rates started rising, and they haven't come down. Now the president is threatening to fire Jerome Powell and this and that. But again, there's only so much they can lower, right? We're at 5%. They can lower it to 0 or go to negative rates. I don't know. But eventually we'll get there. But we go through this back and forth, this seesaw. And it is a better investment to invest in Bitcoin or any crypto that you believe is going to move higher. And again, probably has institutional interest as well. Because there is no overhead. There are no property taxes. There are no utilities. Period. I've talked to real estate investors who are like, yeah, but you have to pay rent and you live in the home. And it's like, yeah, but if the home is only going up in price by maybe double or triple over the course of 20 or 30 years versus Bitcoin that goes up double or triple every 4 or so years based on, the Bitcoin halving cycle, the inflation and the halving, right? That makes Bitcoin a better investment, period. And so, yes, people are going to be putting their money in that. And then they're going to be looking for things to do with their money. And this is where Ethereum and the layer 2s and Ethereum adjacent chains come in, because there's money to be made from staking and yield like that. And meanwhile, CNBC anchors are openly talking about Bitcoin and crypto, sending credit card fees to 0. This is underway, right? They're shaking up the whole financial industry. The banks that are saying, oh, we're gonna accept crypto, we're gonna be the on-ramp for crypto, they're not doing this because they want to do it. They know that if they don't innovate, they are done, period. Because the banking ecosystem, it's all fake, right? Most people, if you ask them like what a bank is, they believe it's where you put your money and you can get get loans. But that's pretty much all they know about it. They don't understand that these banks have no money. Right? We just found out that Wells Fargo Bank, they borrowed $200 billion for 3 months of operation. $200 billion. This is non-sustainable business. Does this mean they're going to fail? I don't think so. But we are seeing banks failing over the course of time. Since 2008 to now, hundreds or thousands of banks have failed. And then the bigger banks eat them up. And eventually you're going to only have one or two big banks. And this is why it's important that crypto is accepted where we are now. And we're starting to see the new banks, the Coinbases of the world, the Geminis of the world, the Krakens of the world, the Binances of the world, all these major crypto exchanges. And now the banks are getting involved in crypto as well because they have to. It's not because they want to. And the credit card companies, they're starting to learn about crypto too. I mean, they've been researching for sure, but now they're starting to implement things, right? We're starting to see crypto credit cards and stuff like that. They're going to start testing these things on chain to lower their costs. It's not that they want to, they don't have a choice. They cannot compete if they don't have this. The old world of finance is gone, guys. This whole idea that buying a home is the best investment, this is why the prices won't come down. 2021, people were buying homes, like old ass homes, they were buying without doing any inspection and paying more than the list price. These things are ridiculous, right? That market is done. The banking industry is done. It's the new world of finance. It's here. These bills have solidified that very clearly. And by the way, banks and credit card firms are issuing their own crypto tokens. Why? Because they think they can do it better. I think it's going to be a failure. I think most of these internal crypto coins or tokens or stable coins that these banks make are going to be for internal use and probably cost these banks more than if they just use these public systems. But a lot of banks are nervous about using the public chains like USDC or Tether, even though they are backed one-to-one, even though now we have crypto clarity from a regulatory standpoint and a law standpoint. They may start using these stable coins. And if they're using the stable coins, the networks that run the stable coins, like Ethereum, like Polygon, like Avalanche, like Arbitrum, these are going to do extremely well. Again, this is going to take time, but this is all setting up for the next bull market, right? Where all this infrastructure is already implemented. And then you're going to have more services coming online, more integration of cryptocurrencies, and probably the big banks kind of changing their offerings of what they actually do to make money. This is underway right now. Visa and MasterCard have a $253 billion nightmare, and that is crypto, if this website ever pulls up. So the crypto threat, that's skipping the swipe, right? Remember, every time you swipe a credit card, the credit card company's making 3-4% of that sale at a minimum. And so now with stable coins and crypto, if they implement stable coins, the fees are basically fractions of a penny. So imagine going from paying, let's say, $100 per transaction or whatever it is, to paying like, a dollar, right? 1/100th of the price. This is going to change the game because these companies, it's not that they want to do this. They don't have a choice. It's like, do you continue to charge customers or do you have your competition come in, lower the fees to basically zero and then move forward, right? And if you think about it, as time moves on, all technology becomes cheaper and more accessible and eventually free, right? I mean, even just think about like, flat screen TVs, for example. Back in the 90s, these were, thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, you can basically get one for free from somebody just putting it in the trash, right? You can't even really make money on it in the secondary market. And there's a lot of technologies like this. As time goes on, they become more open and accessible to the masses and become less expensive, unless it's in a monopolistic type of corporate structure. Similar to think about big pharma. As time goes on, the cost of what they're selling is not going lower. They just keep milking the industry, but that industry is more of a monopolized industry. Now, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, these credit card companies, they have a monopoly on this industry, right? On the payment networks, and probably because they're doing a very good job at what they're doing. But now you have a whole new industry coming in. And these credit card companies, these banks, they're like, like we were making our money on swipe fees. We were making our money on people not having money in their bank accounts and swiping their card, overdraft fees. We've been making our money on requiring minimum balances. And now these new companies that are popping up, Coinbase, Kraken, Binance, like you could just hold your money, earn 4 or 5% interest, and have no fees associated at all. These companies, these banks, these payment networks, they have to change. They don't have a choice. And this is very interesting because this is a great opportunity to front run the banks, front run these payment networks around the world. They don't have a choice at this point. And so they can create their own network and test that out, or they can use these public networks or a combination of the two. And they're probably already doing this. We just don't know. But all these bullish signals are leading us to the point of effectively euphoria in the markets, which show that this is the end stages of the bull market. But then you have Michael Saylor going on another podcast and saying again that we're not going to have a bear market, or not like 2022. Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Let's listen to what Michael Saylor says here in this podcast. And don't forget to give this video a free thumbs up. We got a lot more that we're going to be discussing in today's video, including the altcoin situation, what Wall Street is actually doing with the data, and much more. So make sure you guys stick around. Let's listen to Michael Saylor.
If we go through another Bitcoin bear market similar to 2022, do you think MSTR and other Bitcoin treasury companies will go back to trading below 1x MNAV?
My opinion on that is 100% yes, that will happen. And if you guys are not aware of what MNAV is, basically if you took all the underlying assets, all the Bitcoin that MicroStrategy held, it's around $70 billion approximately. And if you look at their market cap, it's about $120 billion. So there's a $50 billion difference. And that is the premium to the net asset value, right? To the MNAV. It's a multiple of the NAV. And so I personally believe that we're going to see negative MNAV in a very short order, right? Because all it takes is a precipitous drop in Bitcoin. And then the MicroStrategy price is going to go down because the Bitcoin price is going down. But there will probably also be less buyers on the other end when that occurs, especially if we are in a macro rotation into a bear market. And then that's when you'll see the suppression of the MNAV. But again, Michael Saylor doesn't believe this is going to occur. I remember what happened in 2020 with Grayscale's MNAV, because Grayscale, there were no ETFs back then. It was just Grayscale. And a lot of their products had negative premiums or positive premiums. And this was a great opportunity to arb trade those. And I did. And I made a lot of money out of there. And that happened during the bull market. So they're thinking in a bear market. Let's listen to what Michael Saylor believes will happen in a bear market. Will that MNAV go into negative? Let's listen to what he says.
1x MNAV?
No, I don't think so. You can never be sure what'll happen, but
no, we can be sure what'll happen. He has a fiduciary obligation. You have to understand, like he cannot say no. The price of MicroStrategy is going to drop precipitously, potentially by 50%, just to bring the MNAV in line. But as an analyst here who doesn't work for MicroStrategy, that's bullshit. It is definitely going to suppress 100%. When it does that, I don't know, but it will. It will, because nobody's going to pay, right, double. Even if you want exposure to Bitcoin, you can just go to the Bitcoin ETFs. You can go to any of the other Bitcoin treasury companies. Why would you go and buy MicroStrategy, where the underlying asset is priced almost double what you can just buy the Bitcoin for? And by the way, like a lot of the buyers of MicroStrategy are probably Wall Street, just trying to own a piece of MicroStrategy. But eventually that's going to stop because they're already going to own it. And so I don't believe that Michael Saylor truly believes there's not going to be a bear market, or that the MNAV is not going to suppress. It will definitely suppress. Let's continue listening in.
I don't think first of all, I don't think we'll have a bear market like 2022. I think the only people that say that are the crypto bros, and the crypto bros are the ones that created the bear market of 2022. And they did it because they don't understand finance.
Okay. first of all, he's partially correct. First of all, you guys know I believe in the 4-year cycle, right? So there's going to be a bull market, there's going to be a bear market, and there's going to be sideways trading in that. We are now like literally almost a year and a half after the Bitcoin halving occurred. This is historically where the top of the market is hit. And so he is partially correct. FTX and a lot of this borrowing and loaning nonsense with Voyager, Celsius, 3 Hours Capital, all these different companies, this is why they went down. This is why we kind of transitioned into a bear market. So he's partially correct. But remember what he's doing. He's buying Bitcoin with debt. And it's all around one company, one single point of failure, which is MicroStrategy. Now, they are trying to create capital markets, and they may be successful at this. And they may not have any issues, and maybe the MNAV won't drop, right? But what about the other companies that are buying now at all-time record highs? What happens if we go below $100,000 and they all bought at $110,000 and higher? What's going to happen to them? Are they going to collapse? What is that going to do for the fear in the market? And then what is that going to do for the fear of MicroStrategy? Because everybody's going to be fearful as soon as one of these companies don't make it or collapse or go bankrupt or whatever. They're going to be worried. And that fear alone can push the price of MicroStrategy much, much lower than it's at. And this is the play that Jim Chanos is doing with MicroStrategy. He's long Bitcoin, short MicroStrategy. Meanwhile, Resolve AI reaffirms a commitment to $1 billion in a Bitcoin treasury strategy. They previously announced in February, but no actual purchases have been announced yet. So Jim Chanos says, we're serious about this. So think about this. Remember what I told you guys. We're starting to get companies that have nothing to do with finance, nothing to do with crypto, nothing to do with, holding cryptos. And they're changing they're rebranding and saying we're going to become a Bitcoin treasury company. This is very similar to what happened in previous cycles. Long Island Iced Tea Company were completely rebranded to Long Island Blockchain Company. Their stock price went up. They didn't do anything with blockchain. That's what we're seeing here. Resolve AI reaffirms a commitment to $1 billion in a Bitcoin treasury strategy and governance-led execution. This is in July, 6 months after. They've already made an announcement that they were going to start a Bitcoin treasury company, and they haven't purchased one Bitcoin. Well, I would imagine if you look at their stock price, it's probably going to show something. Let's see. RZLV. Let's take a look at this. RZLV. And don't forget to give this video a free thumbs up while we're pulling this up. So I bet you at the beginning of the year we had a little spike. Nope, it was straight down. You can see the 1-year chart. Again, I'm guessing because it's called AI, this was probably an AI play in the previous year. As you can see, yeah, and since 2021, the price kind of went up. And then in the middle, basically 1 year ago, just a cratering of basically 90%, 85% of the price. And so now, where they're at all-time record lows in the price, they're making an announcement, oh, we're going to buy Bitcoin. They still haven't bought any Bitcoin. But they're really serious. Anyway, we're now hearing about a Japanese nail salon operator becoming the next Bitcoin treasury company. Like, this is where we're at in the cycle, where there's nothing wrong with a Japanese nail salon operator buying Bitcoin, right? But again, for us to believe that this is going to become a MicroStrategy level company is absurd. And we're at all-time record highs, and we're hearing about more and more of these companies like Japanese nail salon operators buying Bitcoin. We also just heard this company, Vulcan, they have a $5 million market cap. $5 million. They announced a Bitcoin treasury strategy and a $500 million private placement to start a Bitcoin treasury company. They also amended their ATM program right at the market so they can sell shares on the open market to allow up to $1 billion in future equity raises. So they're raising $500 million. They are authorizing $1 billion in new stock issued to raise money. And this company is worth now, after the announcement, still less than $10 million. And so the idea here is because it's very low market cap and probably has very, very low float, them announcing this price is probably going much higher. Will I be purchasing this? No, because this will be a pump and dump, 100%. And we're going to see more and more of this. But this is end stages of the bull market. This is not like the Bitcoin maxis will say, "Oh my God, look at this company Vulcan has become. They're going to raise $1 billion from Bitcoin." It's like, guys, their market cap is $5 million. Who's giving them $1 billion to buy Bitcoin? Right? Maybe there will be companies that are giving them 500 million to buy Bitcoin, but they're going to be buying Bitcoin at literally all-time record highs, higher than when I called the top and higher when people were like, no, Cryptoviser, we're not at the top. Now we're at 120,000 and there's more companies announcing it. And if we get to 150, it's going to be even more companies announcing it. But this is the same kind of sentiment as when, your Uber driver is talking to you about Bitcoin, or your grandmother is asking you how they can buy Dogecoin, right? It's the same sentiment. It's end stages. They didn't do this in the bear market. They're not waiting for the bear market to do it. They're doing it in a bull market to extract value from the network, to extract value from you. Now, this is not saying all the companies, because there are obviously a lot of good companies that are buying crypto, but we also know Wall Street. What are they doing? Cathie Wood's ARK Invest dumps its Bitcoin ETF after the split adjusted all-time high. And so as I've been explaining, Wall Street will be selling the top of the market, and they are. They are. Now, granted, this is an ETF, and Cathie Wood's ARK Invest companies, they go in and out of positions regularly. They take profits regularly. And so for me, it's kind of a little bit of an indicator, like what Cathie Wood is doing, pay attention to. Because if they're pulling money out, other investors are looking at what they're doing. And it's not just crypto related. They also have other non-crypto related stocks that they invest in as well. And these could be great plays because they do pull profit, unlike a lot of the other ETFs that don't. They do, right? But we also heard, remember the OG whale that had 80,000 Bitcoin? Well, just the other day, I reported that they sold 40,000 already. And now the OG Bitcoin whale moved another 40,000 Bitcoin worth almost $5 billion to new addresses amid speculation of sales that are coming. They are coming. I remember when the OG Bitcoin whale, right? And the reason they call it OG Bitcoin whale is because they were moving Bitcoin from Satoshi era, right? Or very, very early on, Bitcoin miner didn't touch their Bitcoin for 14 years, just unlocked the coins from a wallet, moved it to an exchange, it got sold. And this is another indicator, right? Because they are taking the liquidity, they're taking the exit. It's the same thing like if you own a home, right? And you're like, I'm never going to sell this home. I'm going to live in here the rest of my life. It's like, okay, great. You bought the home for, let's say, $200,000, right? So then somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I'm going to give you $500,000 for the home. You got to move out tomorrow. You're like, nah, it's not really, it's 2.5 times what I paid, and I'm probably going to have to pay more for another home if I sell now. They're like, okay, we'll give you $1 million. And then that's 5 times what you paid. But again, now what is this going to do for the future value of the home? Do you really want to move? But then somebody comes around and says, listen, I'm going to give you $5 million, which is way more than 10 times. It's like 25 times what they paid for the home. We're going to give you $5 million. You got to move out tomorrow. What do you think the person's going to do? They're going to take the money, period. Because the home is not worth $5 million. They know that the home is not worth $5 million. To them, it may be worth $5 million because that's where they live. But they're going to sell it for 100%. Maybe some people wouldn't, but the majority of people would. Same thing is happening here with the Bitcoin. If you have 40,000 Bitcoin and you have buyers in the market, which don't always come around, right? Michael Saylor does buy, but he's also buying from the Bitcoin mining companies. And so when you are having all of these other companies joining in this, we're going to keep buying Bitcoin, we're going to start buying Bitcoin at all-time record highs. As an OG investor, you're going to say, wait, all these people are buying at all-time record highs. We're in the 12 to 18 month time frame after the Bitcoin halving, which historically is the top of the market. We're seeing all of these other companies making these ridiculous announcements about, oh, we just bought 10 Bitcoin, we just bought half a Bitcoin. Who cares, right? These are top indicators. And by the way, I knew this OG Bitcoin whale was going to sell their Bitcoin because everybody was saying they're not going to sell. They're just moving it to let everybody know that they still have access to the coins. It's like, no, they're moving it because they're going to sell it. They're going to take the money. That's what people are trying to get in this world of finance. More money, more wealth, lock it in. Even if you think the dollar is going to diminish, right? I don't think the dollar is going anywhere in the next year, but I do think the Bitcoin price is going somewhere in the next year. And so if you could sell 40,000 Bitcoin for $5 billion and get the cash, guaranteed, and in the future, you can buy those Bitcoin back for half the price, why would you not do that? And they're probably not going to buy it. I mean, you have $5 billion. You don't need to rebuy the Bitcoin, right? And by the way, the OG whale, if they have 80,000 Bitcoin that they're selling, they have a lot more. They have a lot more. So this is not it. They can wait till the next cycle and then sell the next tranche. And so a lot of people don't see these things that we're connecting together in today's video. They don't see it. They're so wrapped up in where we are in the cycle and wow, I'm the most bullish. We're at all-time record highs. It's like, no, when we're at all-time record highs, you should be the most bearish. And when we're at all-time record lows, you should be the most bullish. And they're also not paying attention to the fear and greed index, which keeps going more and more into greed. The greener we get on the greed scale, the more bearish I get. The redder we get, the more bullish I get. It's opposite what the market is actually doing. Okay, so this was those. And now we're talking about alt season, right? So Bitcoin is consolidating. And as I've been explaining for literally weeks now, you can go back on my channel and look, the rotation into Ethereum is underway. And it's been underway. By the time you're watching this video, it's been underway for multiple weeks. A lot of people are like, no, Cryptoviser, I don't think that the altcoin season has started yet. It's like, no, it's starting. We are in the process of it happening. If you wait until these coins double or triple in price to start buying in, you're late. Period. We are in a very rocky period in the market, because there's a lot of money that's going to be made, but there's also going to be a lot of money that's going to be lost because people are going to be FOMOing in. I mean, really moving forward here, the buying should be at a limit, very limited, and it should be mostly selling. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of people buying and not selling and saying that they're the most bullish now instead of being the most bullish, a year ago. And I'm not saying that we're not going higher. I think we're going much higher. But it's now alt season, and alts are starting to pump. We're seeing across the board, alts are moving, and they're starting to move a little bit. People are starting to notice, then they dip, and then people ignore it. This is the volatility. This is end stage volatility. Any day, these coins can pump double, triple, quadruple immediately. I mean, Ethereum is going to lead this, and we've already been seeing this. As Ethereum is moving up, the rest of the Ethereum layer 2s and Ethereum adjacent chains, they're starting to correct upwards as Ethereum is adjusting. So Ethereum went from about 2,500 about a week or two ago to where we are now, $35 to almost $4,000. And while this is going on, we're seeing other coins like XRP, Polygon, Arbitrum. These are making massive moves and corrective upshoots. Stellar's doing the same thing. SWI has even kind of moved. And so we're starting to see a repricing in the network. And as the repricing is going on, investors are repricing as well, because now they're looking and saying, wait, which coins are not repriced correctly yet? Let me buy into them. And then as they're buying into them, then those coins correct to their true fair value, which is probably different than what the value is when people were analyzing the market. But we are also seeing these Ethereum treasury companies, which I think is going to be a different story than what we're seeing with Bitcoin treasury companies, because we are, at all-time record highs in Bitcoin, but Ethereum hasn't even reached that. Meanwhile, BTCS, which I just covered the other day, which was going to be starting their Bitcoin treasury thesis, they have now announced their inclusion in the Russell Microcap Index. And this is going to cause constant inflows into BTCS. And by the way, like the stock of BTCS has done extremely well, as I've explained when I first reported that as soon as you hear, right, I said this a few videos back, maybe about a week or two ago. I said, as soon as we start to hear of another company buying Ethereum and the company has some substance to it, like they're an actual company, not just a nail operator, we need to immediately go in there and buy in before the pump. A lot of people said Cryptoviser, like, how do we know? How do we get this info? Well, you have to be following the right accounts that are constantly monitoring the market and looking for these kind of news events and getting it out there before it hits the news cycle. Because remember, the news cycle always lags. I'm recording this video, altcoin season returns. It's been ongoing for a few days now, maybe a week. And the news cycle's just catching up. And so the same thing occurs when we're talking about these Bitcoin or Ethereum treasury companies. BTCS, they made their announcement just the other day that they were going to be getting into Ethereum and staking Ethereum and raising money to get Ethereum. The price of the stock was about $2. Now it's $7, right? Which, if you look at, this is an increase of over basically about 200% just in the last few weeks. Now, there's a lot of people who've also asked about Cryptoviser. How do we know when to buy into it? Well, the announcement was here, and this was the initial pump. Then you had a little bit of a pullback as the market kind of was getting itself, situated, I guess you could say. And then you had a few days to get in there, basically a week of stagnation before the second leg up to $7. And it's potentially going much, much higher because these Ethereum treasuries is the very beginning. And a lot of companies and a lot of big money is looking for a better alternative to Bitcoin, which is Ethereum, because you can actually make money on Ethereum versus just holding Bitcoin. There's no money to be made just yet. Obviously, in the future, they may leverage their Bitcoin to earn money, but right now it's just non-productive capital, right? You're just hoping that the price of the asset goes up, even though we're at all-time record highs pretty much all year now. And that will reverse. It will. So that's BTCS. We just heard from this user who said another Bitcoin company is pivoting to Ethereum. Ethereum is the next Bitcoin. If you don't get it, I don't have time to explain it to you. And basically posted this from a Singapore company called Bitcoin Digital, is a leading blockchain tech company announcing a transformative strategic shift to fully embrace Ethereum as its core asset and operational foundation. As part of the initiative, this company has closed a $6 million financing round and added $1 million of Ethereum's position. Going forward, the company intends to convert all existing and future Bitcoin holdings into Ethereum to build a long-term productive on-chain asset pool to anchor to its mid and long-term growth around Ethereum's ecosystem. And so again, another company dumping their Bitcoin for Ethereum. Bit Digital just did this recently as well. This is underway. And so the dumping of Bitcoin is happening from whales, like the OG whale with 80,000 Bitcoin. It's happening from Bitcoin mining companies. They're selling their Bitcoin. And there is something to say, well, maybe Michael Saylor's buying in. That's true. But it could also be any of these other companies that are just starting to buy Bitcoin now at $120,000. So they're buying it from another company that's dumping their Bitcoin to move to Ethereum. That is the play. That is the play. And if this continues and fulfills in terms of kind of the macro move into ETH and ETH denominated in DeFi assets, Ethereum is going much, 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 much higher. I don't know how high. I'm thinking under 10,000 because most people are thinking 10,000. But just yesterday or 2 days ago or whenever it was, I posted a video where we actually did the math, and for Ethereum to reach the Bitcoin market cap of about $2.5 billion, trillion dollars, Ethereum would have to basically go up to about $20,000. Okay, so $20,000 Ethereum price would be about $2.5 trillion market cap. I don't know if that's going to occur, right? I definitely think that Ethereum could reach that. But again, if we're rotating out of Bitcoin and into Ethereum, right? I'm saying the general market, then we are probably going to see a precipitous drop in the Bitcoin price and an increase in the Ethereum price. So the drop would bring the market cap of Bitcoin down. And then will Ethereum be able to achieve whatever the market cap of Bitcoin is at that point? Maybe $1 trillion, maybe $2 trillion, maybe even lower than that. Or are we potentially going to see a flippening? I don't think this has ever happened before where Ethereum flipped Bitcoin, or any crypto for that matter flipped Bitcoin. But there is a possibility that it will occur, especially if the price is going down. All these Bitcoin treasury companies keep buying Bitcoin to keep it propped up, but they're basically buying it from these other companies that are moving into Ethereum. And Ethereum, again, is productive because you can earn yield versus Bitcoin, which is not productive. And Wall Street wants productivity. They want to see cash flow. They want to see earnings, revenue. Bitcoin treasury companies don't necessarily have that just from holding the Bitcoin, unless they're doing something else with the Bitcoin, which supposedly they're not doing just yet. And so this is something to really think about, because where is the market going? I personally don't know. It's very interesting. I mean, I'm trying to hedge on both ends, because the market will flip at some point where Bitcoin will drop, Ethereum will drop. But I think that we still have more room to go, specifically with Ethereum and the layer twos and Ethereum adjacent chains. And with all of these companies diving into Ethereum, this could make the valuations soar. And by the way, we're starting to also see Polygon beginning to get a little bit more focus. I think after these congressional bills passed, because this enables DeFi, it allows stablecoin regulation. And most of that flow is occurring on Polygon. Polygon is the number one used chain for micropayments. It's the number one used chain when we're talking about stable coins for payments. And what we are now seeing, according to this analyst, he said Polygon net flows are over $43 million in just 24 hours. Polygon is cooking and the numbers are confirming it. He posted this the day that the bills in Congress passed. And this goes very in line with what I just said. The bills, the laws, have to do with regulation, stable coins, market clarity, and all of that is being built within the Ethereum ecosystem. So you have Ethereum getting a bid from these Ethereum treasury companies. You have the entire DeFi ecosystem potentially getting a bid from the the congressional bills that passed and are going to get signed into law. And then you have the underperforming networks that are performing from a network perspective, but are not performing from a price perspective, showing real promise. And this is why I think that potentially we are going to see Polygon get a major bid in the near term, especially as Ethereum starts to move higher. Remember, Polygon's market cap is only $2.5 billion. This is much lower than the Bonk coin, than the PP coin, than Shiba Inu, and all of these other shit coins that do absolutely nothing, right? I think that has to correct. I think it is going to correct. And how do I know or theorize that it's actually going to correct? Well, just look at Arbitrum. Arbitrum is starting to correct back to the upside. We've seen massive dilution of Arbitrum over the last few years because of inflation of their coins, unlocking of investor coins and Genesis coins, because it is a fairly new chain. And all of that diluted the coin, and we saw a massive drawdown in the price. Polygon, similar kind of situation. They also went through a rebrand, and DeFi was not really a focus. But these two ecosystems continue to build. And what happened to Arbitrum? Last week is up 16%. Polygon, just up 3%. But like I said, as Ethereum starts to correct, as people keep buying, a lot of these layer twos, I believe personally, are going to correct to their true valuation. And by the way, it's not just the inflows on Polygon. On July 17th, the same day that those inflows were reported, Polygon processed 4.4 million transactions, surpassing a 30-day high of 4.3 million transactions. With the new Himdall version 2, this was a recent upgrade to the underlying tech stack on Polygon. Polygon's scaling momentum is turning into consistency. There you go. And so this is potentially, if we think about Arbitrum and Polygon, these are two layer twos that settle on Ethereum and have massive use cases. I mean, Arbitrum just was chosen by Robinhood to tokenize the stocks that they're going to be selling through tokenization on Arbitrum. So you have Arbitrum and Polygon, the two premier layer twos, both worth $2.5 billion and much lower valuation than coins like PP Coin and Shiba Inu Coin and Ton Coin, right? Isn't Ton Coin just the coin that recently said you can get a visa in the UAE if you stake your Ton Coin, but then the UAE said, we don't know anything about this? Yeah, that's worth more valuation than both Arbitrum and Polygon combined. Ton Coin has triple the valuation of Arbitrum and triple the valuation of Polygon. More than triple, by the way. Tell me how that works. It shouldn't, right? It's clearly a misvaluation. And it's going to be revalued at some point. Anyway, we're now also hearing institutions are stocking up on Bitcoin and Ethereum as retail interest cools. We've also been talking about this retail interest, right? Everybody keeps saying, well, retail hasn't joined. Retail hasn't come in. It's like, guys, Wall Street is literally buying billions and billions of dollars of Bitcoin a day, right? This is the ETF flows. You can see this last column right here. This shows you day by day total how much all the Bitcoin ETFs purchased or sold net. And you can see pretty much in July, every day is a positive day. 100 million, 400 million, 600 million, 200 million, 80 million, 115 million, 1.1 billion, 1 billion, 300 million, 400 million, 800 million, 500 million. These are all inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs just in July. So the Wall Street is still buying because at the end of the day, guys, Wall Street doesn't care about where the price is. Effectively, you have to look at Wall Street as like unlimited money. Unlimited. Because we don't know who's on the other end of that. This could be billionaires. It could be the government. It could be companies. It could be individual investors. But it's probably some of those higher level ones that we just talked about. They don't care where the price of Bitcoin is because they are thinking about this on a generational, right? Think about like the Rockefellers, right? If the Rockefellers, if they're not sure about Bitcoin, right, they may say, okay, let's allocate $1 billion into Bitcoin. They don't care what happens to the price in the next 10 years, 20 years. They have enough money to cover themselves. They're thinking about their next generation. What if their kids or their kids' kids grow up and Bitcoin is the world reserve asset? Well, they already won before they even started. And so Wall Street doesn't care where the price is, but you should. Because Wall Street can take a 50% hit to their portfolio. You probably can't. / you don't want to, right? I've taken more than 50% drawdowns in specific positions in my portfolio. Some permanently, some for years, some I just rotated out of, some rotated out themselves, right? They regain the valuation. But you don't want to be in a position where you're 50 or more percent in the hole in any position or your whole portfolio. And by the way, there's going to be a lot of people who have that because they're going to be buying Bitcoin. They're not taking profits. They're not rotating into other cryptos. They're not listening to the red kind of signals that we hit the top of the market. So they're going to keep buying. And by this time next year, by the middle of 2026, I called it in 2021. I said by next year, there's going to be people who are millionaires today that are broke next year. And sure enough, it happened because they overplay their hand, right? If you're in a casino and you're winning, you're in a slot machine, you just won, $10,000. Are you going to keep playing that 10K or maybe you play a few $100s, but you're pulling the rest of it, right? Most people would. But some people are like, I'm on my lucky streak. Let's double down. And then they double down and then they lose. So you have to understand, like, there are bigger players in this game. Your job is to secure profits, build your wealth over the course of time. Buy low, sell high. We are literally at the high point. And Wall Street is buying, right? So if you're selling, they're buying. And you may say, but Cryptoviser, I don't want to sell my coins to Wall Street. Who gives a shit? You don't know that you're selling it to Wall Street. Like, you don't know that. That's number one. Number two, who cares? They're buying. They're giving you the money for the coin. And you can say, well, I don't want to give it to them. Then don't. But they don't care where the price is. They will continue to buy. And there will continue to be liquidity, and there will be corrections. There will be massive moves to the upside. But the rotation is underway. Because I just showed you the Bitcoin ETFs. Look at the Ethereum ETFs, all in July. June, it was like double-digit millions of dollars. You can see that right here. And then what happened in July? 150 million, 62 million, 46 million, 211 million, 383 million, 204 million, 259 million. This is per day. 192 million, 726 million, 600 million. It's fulfilling its own success because the Ethereum ETFs are pumping. Why? Because the Ethereum treasury companies are now raising money to buy Ethereum, which wasn't happening before. The sole focus was on Bitcoin. Now we're starting to see Ethereum and the flows are increasing. And so there is an opportunity, because this is so early, to still get in Ethereum, right? Under all-time highs. Because if we do pass all-time highs, there's a potential that we're going to move much higher, right? Remember, the range that we're looking at is any from where we are right now in the price up to $20,000. Now, I have seen other predictions from even the banks. One bank said by 2030 they're expecting $180,000 Ethereum. That's possible, but they're talking about 2030. That's another cycle ahead. We're in 2025. Let's focus on this year first, right? And so this year, I'm looking at a high of about $20,000. That's like tippy top high. But I'm actually more conservative in my actual guesstimation on Ethereum's price. And basically, if you just listen to what the sentiment is around Ethereum and listen to what the predictions are, whatever the lowest prediction is, it's going to be lower than that, right? That's kind of the easiest way to kind of guesstimate where these prices are going. And so a lot of people are anticipating 10,000. I haven't really heard too much over 10,000, but as we approach 10,000 or as we approach the $5,000 to $10,000 range, you're going to hear more and more people going above 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. I don't know where we're going to land, but I would imagine it's probably going to, it really depends on how many companies start to buy Ethereum and at what pace they do it at. Now with the bills passing and crypto and DeFi being accepted and Ethereum, really all eyes on Ethereum now, right? People know what Bitcoin is. People know the thesis on Bitcoin, but it's exhausted, right? There's only so many days I could wake up and see that one company bought, half a Bitcoin and they're announcing it like, oh, hey guys, we just bought one Bitcoin. Aren't you excited? It's like, not really. Nobody tells us when they're buying Apple stock or Tesla stock, right? It's like, hey, Cryptoviser just bought one share of Tesla today. My new dollar cost average is way too high. It's like, who gives a shit? Like, who really cares? But that's what we're hearing with Bitcoin over and over and over for 2 years. And people are like, they're starting to come. Wall Street is starting to come. It's like, where have you been? Wall Street has already been here, but now they're rotating into Ethereum. And there's very few moments in the market where I am very confident in a move. Sometimes I even have to catch myself like, this move is not really happening. This is too risky. Things are moving to Ethereum. I think that it's very, very clear at this point. And if this continues, and if it continues to grow, and the Ethereum ecosystem continues to grow, because you have to remember, Bitcoin doesn't have an ecosystem. So there's no layer twos to help Bitcoin grow and build. Ethereum is interconnected with everything. So if other coins do well, Ethereum does well. And if Ethereum does well, the other coins do well. So we're talking about an entire ecosystem bull run now, not a Bitcoin bull run. It's a big difference. It's like a technology bull run, right? A tech sector bull run versus Tesla bull run. or the financial sector is having a bull run versus JP Morgan is having a bull run. These are very different things. I personally believe crypto is now entering final stages of the bull run. Bitcoin has already been there. And that doesn't mean there's not going to be volatility, because I do think what's basically going to occur towards the end of the cycle is Bitcoin's going to have a little bit of a pullback. Ethereum and the adjacent chains will probably move much higher. Then we'll start to see profit taking in those. And then the rotation will go back into Bitcoin, right? This is why I think Bitcoin has to come down precipitously, right? I'm talking about like $50,000 price. Everyone's saying it's not going to happen. But if everybody's rotating into Ethereum and the Ethereum coins, there's no liquidity for Bitcoin, even from an institutional level, right? Even from MicroStrategy, who are they going to raise the money from when Wall Street is focused on Ethereum and the Ethereum coins and the Ethereum, or I'm just saying Ethereum is like the rest of the market, ETFs get approved. That's what Wall Street's going to be focused on. They're no longer going to be focused on Bitcoin. So it's going to be harder, in my view, to raise more money for the Bitcoin treasury companies than it is going to be for the Ethereum treasury companies. But either way, I think Bitcoin will drop precipitously, potentially to $50,000. I would imagine definitely under MicroStrategy's dollar cost average, which is about $71,000. This is going to cause all of the Bitcoin treasury companies to come down massively from a price perspective. This is going to occur all while Ethereum and the layer twos and everything else is going to start moving higher. Then we're going to start to see rotation back. So if Bitcoin goes to 50,000, you guys, if you are bullish about Bitcoin at 100,000, you're going to be double, or you should be double bullish at 50,000. And so once that play in the altcoins is at new all-time highs and everybody's euphoric, people are going to start taking profits, then they're going to say, wait, Bitcoin's 50,000 now, and I just tripled or quadrupled or 10x my investment in these alts. Let's put some of that money to work back in Bitcoin. And then we'll see a draining of the altcoins, a repump of Bitcoin, potentially new all-time record highs, while the ETH and DeFi ecosystems come down, and then people will start taking profits on Bitcoin. Because in the midst of the bull market, when there's very high volume, you start to see those rotations. Profit taking, redeploy. Profit taking, redeploy. Profit taking, redeploy. You just have to know when to stop redeploying. Otherwise, you keep doubling down, redeploying your profits, and then the market does turn around completely, and you're like, oh, this is just a dip. I'm going to buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip. And the dip keeps dipping, and then you lose everything that you basically made in the year, which is hard to fathom, but it does happen, and it will happen. You have to stay on top of that. Secure your profits. Make sure you don't overplay the market, and know what signals you want to make sure that you exit and stay exited in the green. Anyway, those are just my opinions and thoughts on everything going on in crypto. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's conversation. I want to know what you guys think about Bitcoin, Ethereum, these layer twos, all these Bitcoin and Ethereum treasury companies. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. Also, check out my other videos on the channel. We have over 5 to 7 years of actual content here dating back to when we started this channel in 2018. So make sure you guys check out my other videos as well. And I'll see you guys when I see you. Invest responsibly, do your own research, and crypto on.